that you all are connected to this webinar. Before I begin, my name is Leticia Johnson. I'm working in the SheTrades initiative, specifically behind the SheTrades Invest project, which aims to connect women entrepreneurs with the right impact investors. For those who don't know SheTrades, SheTrades is part of the International Trade Center. It is an initiative that aims to connect 3 million women entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses to the international markets by 2021. Because access to finance is a great deal for a majority of women, we wanted to come and we wanted to bridge that gap. So SheTrades Invest aims to support women by helping them become investment ready. Oh, I see that I need to speak a little louder. Thank you for letting me know. Become investment ready, and this is through webinars, e-learning courses, and some workshops that we have in country. In addition to that, we have a SheTrades Invest survey for women entrepreneurs who are interested in getting access to finance. The second call for applications will be in the middle of July. Please be aware of that. And from that, you will have access to more opportunities. So without further ado, today we have Lisa Lothers, who is part of the social business Common Good Solutions, who is going to be talking to us about a social business model canvas. Lisa, are you online and can you hear me? Hi, Lisa.
I can hear you, yes.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to introduce Lisa. So Lisa is the Learning Manager and Development Officer for Common Good Solution, the first community-interested company in Nova Scotia. She has invested 30 years in community and business development and is passionate about helping people build business models to create a better world. As the third person in Canada to be certified as an APEC/BC Small Business Council in 1996, Lisa brings 3 decades of experience working for and with startups in the for-profit and non-profit sectors. She understands the challenges in building strong communities through value-based business practices. Lisa is particularly interested in the uniqueness of every client situation, the importance of place, and making any venture successful, and in the skills of management personality at work. The Social Business Model Canvas is a one-pager tool to help plan, communicate, and refine your business model in a simple visual way. A business model, we mean a design for the successful operation of a business. It describes how you will reach the customers, give them something they value, and make enough money from doing so to achieve your social impact. A social business model canvas provides a powerful visual tool to help with business models design. It is an adaptation of well-known technique developed by Alexander Osterwalder. So without further ado, I would like to hand over the presentation to you, Lisa. As you can see, I'm going to push down a little icon onto your name.
Okay.
And you will now have the presentation. Give me a second. You will now have the presenter's role and you can flip through the slides.
Great.
Just for everyone to know, we're going to do the presentation from 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll have space for questions and answers. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Leticia. As she mentioned, my name is Lisa Lowthers, and I actually live in a tiny province called Nova Scotia on the east coast of Canada. And I work for a company called Common Good Solutions. And we believe that there's an opportunity in this world to not only make profit with an enterprise, but also make good decisions in the operations of that enterprise in order to be able to bring benefits to not only people, but the planet. So we believe there's a shift to the middle with the values of a nonprofit combined with the profitability of a for-profit. So we like to think it's where social impact and smart business meet. Can't seem to get my slides to advance.
Try on your left-hand side, the little icon. Okay.
Oh, there we go. I think
All right.
I've got it now.
Excellent.
Right. So Common Good Solutions, as was mentioned, is something called a community interest company. It's a new legal structure in Nova Scotia, and we are a for-profit company. We have about 20 to 22 staff. I'm one of the oldest staff members. Most of our staff are between the ages of 25 and 29. We work across Nova Scotia, but also across Canada, and increasingly doing work across the world. Right now, we have partners in New Zealand, the United Kingdom, Scotland, and working on a few other companies. And we're really in business because we see a way to change the way business is done in this world. We're also a certified B Corp. And I won't go into too much of that detail, but you can look up B Corp. It's about how to operate your business in a responsible way. Sorry, I went back instead of forward. We're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram if you're looking for us, Common Good Solutions. We also go under the name Social Shifters. So we're shifting to the middle. We're trying to shift business to social. So we call ourselves Social Shifters. So what is a social enterprise? You may or may not have a social enterprise, but I'll go through a little quick definition here. A social enterprise is a business, meaning a for-profit, or organization, meaning a nonprofit, operated for the purpose of addressing social, cultural, or environmental issues in our community. Here in Nova Scotia, it also means that the majority of profits are reinvested to support that community need. So that reinvestment could happen inside our organization. Maybe our supply chain is all local and we hire local marginalized individuals, or perhaps that profit actually goes outside the organization. And that's what happens with our enterprise. We do provide some free services for business startup, but as well, we take 60% of our profit at the end of the year and donate it directly to a nonprofit organization in our community that we believe is doing good work. So ideas are worthless until we get them out of our head and see what they actually can do. And the canvas, the business canvas, is simply a way to think about our business strategically, put it together on one page. There's actually 11 boxes that we'll look at, plus a mission statement for our organization. And it represents how our enterprise will work, how the component parts will fit together, and being really clear about the value that we're offering our customer groups, and looking at what our costs and revenue are and how we reach those customers. So it's really about getting our value to our customers. Where does it come from? The history of a business canvas. So a canvas simply is a word for a one-page document that represents our business. It came originally from the technical industry, from IT companies that were looking at developing new products in-house, and they found that their software development teams had a lot of creativity in coming up with new ideas, but really didn't know how to connect that to the potential markets and the real value that technology would offer. So it came from there. Originally, the business canvas was created by Alexander Osterwalder, and subsequently a second business canvas called the Lean Business Canvas was created by Ash Mora. And there's lots of great videos on YouTube that I would recommend for folks, from one that's 230 minutes or 2 minutes and 30 seconds long to ones that are several hours in describing how to build your lean business model canvas. So after I'm finished today, if you want some of those resources, simply go to YouTube and type in business model canvas or lean business model canvas. So a business model describes the rationale of how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. And that's the gentleman who created the original canvas. We've adapted our canvas from that. So we use this particular canvas for our social enterprise clients. It's important for them to organize themselves and their thoughts so that they can plan their enterprise. Often clients will jump directly into a written business plan for a funder, or sometimes they'll even get to market if they don't need money from someone else, and they just sort of open their doors and start offering the product that they know how to offer, but haven't really thought too much about how to reach their customer and the true value they bring. So it helps them plan, first of all. It also starts to help you develop the language that you need to communicate your message around your business either to funders, to community influencers, or directly to your customers. And the other thing is, this is a document that will grow as your enterprise grows. So we recommend to clients that they always have a current business model canvas that's up to date. I'm working with a client right now who I've worked with for about 2 years, and she does food related products, gardens and food. And I think we're now on her third business model canvas because it's evolved as she learned more about how to operate her business and also about what the customer actually wants. So we use it to describe how your business operates, what value that it will offer, who the customers are, and why the customers should come back to you again and again. And also we use it to attract investors. So let's get started. Here's our social business model canvas. We see in purple 5 sections, and then we see 12 blocks altogether. It starts at the top with our mission statement. And if anyone's interested in knowing more about how to write a mission statement, there's lots of information online, or I can certainly send something along to Letitia to send out to you all. These sections are then, I'll sort of do an overview of the sections, and then we'll go into looking at how to articulate this and an example. So we put our mission statement in the top, where our purpose and a mission statement describes who your customers are, where you're going to do your business, and how you're going to do your business. So you might sell clothing to children in Bangladesh. Our implementation section really looks at how our business will operate. Who are the key allies or partners? Those could also be community influencers that we need to make sure know about our product or service. What are the key resources that we need? What are we going to need to get started? What are we going to need to operate our business month to month and day to day? And what are the key activities that are really important? So at the front end of key activities, we might see things like a written business plan or an investor. But as we move into the operational side, what are the things that we need to do to ensure that we're able to sell our product and also produce that product? And by the way, also collect the money for that product. In the center section of our canvas, we see the value section. So there's 2 components there. We talk about social innovation. Are you doing something that's unique, that's never been done before? And also value proposition. So the value proposition is, what is the actual value? Sometimes that's called unique value proposition that you offer. And it may be that you offer one set to your customers and different values to different customers potentially. But there may also be community value that you represent. There may actually be value inside your organization from an operational point of view. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Then we look at the 3 elements that are in the market section. So what types of customer relationships and which types of customers? What types of consumer benefits am I offering? And you may have a business where the consumer and the customer are the same person, or you may have a business where you actually sell a product to a third party, but the consumer is someone else. And then finally, what are the challenges we're using to market our product and service, and how are we getting that directly to our customer? Across the bottom are the all-encompassing financing side of things. People often say to me, I can figure out everything above financing, but I can't figure out what's below financing. And if we haven't figured out what's below this financing line, then we haven't figured out our business model yet. So what does it cost us to actually deliver our product or service? And I'm going to see connections to all the things listed above that line. I'm going to see things around implementation. I'm going to see things around market, and I might even see things around value that I need to pay for in order to get my product to market. But I also may need to see the revenue streams that correspond to that. And you may have earned income where you're selling a product or service, or more than one product or service. But you also may have something that we call social income or social revenue, where you've actually maybe had some donations from your community. You've had people who've given you in-kind investment, or you actually have had investment through potentially the SheTrades company. Also in the center is that community reinvestment. So whether you fit the definition of social enterprise, or you may simply be a purpose-led business, we consider purpose-led business people who are still motivated to create change in their community, but maybe their percentage of return to the community is not as high as 50%. So what are the types of things that decisions you make either inside your company, like maybe hiring disadvantaged women may be one of the community reinvestments. So their salaries become a reinvestment in the community, because then they're going and spending that locally. It could be that you're using local companies and raw materials, so you're sourcing things locally, so that could be a community benefit. Or it could be that you're actually supporting other initiatives happening in your community. Maybe you're donating money to a women's wellness program, or to youth at risk. So that's sort of a bit of an overview around the social impact canvas. We have our mission, the implementation boxes, we have the value boxes, we have the market boxes, and then we have the finances that support all of those. So let's take a look at this step by step. A mission statement. So a mission statement describes how you do business. And here are 3 examples. So Prezi is actually an online presentation software. It's an alternative to Google Slides or PowerPoint. So Prezi wants to reinvent how people share knowledge, tell stories, and inspire their audiences to act. Warby Parker is an eyewear company. They want to offer designer eyewear at a revolutionary price while leading the way for socially conscious businesses. So they actually produce at a very low rate, produce high quality glasses at a very low rate because of the way that they produce. Sweet Green is about, it's a company, actually a cooperative, that wants to inspire healthier communities by connecting people to real food. So connecting locally sourced food to local people, as opposed to buying food that travels much distance. So mission statement is the first, and there's lots of examples there, and you can find lots of examples online as well. There's also mission statement development tools that are easy to find online, and as well, as I mentioned, I could pass one along to Latisha to hand it to all of you. So let's take a look at that implementation section. So in this isolated slide, we see that those 3 elements are there: key allies, key resources, and key activities. And there's some questions there that help us understand what might go in that particular section. And you all should have a resource that helps you walk through how to use this type of business model canvas. So under key allies, or who are your people and groups that you involve and will shape your success. So that could be people who are direct partners. You're creating partnership with other types of companies, or maybe even organizations in the communities. It could be people who are allies. They're part of your community, and they're influencers in your community, and you want them to be aware of what you're doing. Or they could be suppliers. My apologies, there's a typo there. So suppliers are people that are invested in you being successful because you're buying a product or service from them. Key allies could also be communication organizations. So if there's a local radio station, newsletter, newspaper, those types of things, those could also be people that you want to be involved. The other types of ally that you might have is you might have someone involved in local government. That's important for them to know what you're doing so that they can spread that word in the community as well. So key resources are just what they sound like. So what are the resources that we need to own or have access to, or lease, or purchase in order to have our business run? So that is everything from human resources, people and time, to financial resources, money and access to funding, whether that comes from crowdsourcing or loans, what have you. And then the physical assets, the physical infrastructure. Do I need a building? Can I lease that or rent it? Do I need some type of transportation to get my product or service? Do I need to build a website, because that's an important component of sales? What about a cell phone? So what are the tools of the trade that I need? So depending upon the type of trade that I operate, there may be specific equipment and materials, but it also may be things like certifications that are important to operating my trades-based business as well. Key activities. What are the most important actions and activities that I take to not only provide that product or service to my customer, but also make sure that the back end of my business is healthy and viable? So sometimes we talk about working in the business. I'm making a product, I'm selling it, or service. And then we talk about working on the business. So have I got all my systems in place? Do I have, if I'm not someone who's good with doing the bookkeeping, do I have a bookkeeper that works for me? Or have I found sometimes there are sources community sources that can provide some of that for free. So making sure that we're thinking about those obvious activities that are more facing the customer, but also thinking about building sustainability into our business model to make sure that our business will survive. And some of the problems that people may face is that if there is a quick demand from your marketplace, have you put the systems in place so that someone other than you can run the business? So if you're out selling, then are there other people who can operate and know how your product or service is run? And that's often something that's not thought of a lot at the beginning of an enterprise. People think, well, we wear many hats as an entrepreneur, as a new entrepreneur, and we think we don't necessarily put the systems in place to make sure that as we grow, we have documented the process for providing our product or service, and make sure that as we grow, we can add new people and our quality of our product and service does not suffer from that. So that's our implementation. Who do we need to keep informed? What are the key resources? And what are the key activities that we need to be involved in? Now about our value. So social value looks at, is there truly something innovative that you are doing? And you may not look at the social innovation side of things as we do with social enterprise, but it may just be around, is there something specifically innovative about our enterprise? There does not have to be, but if we're doing something that's unique in our community, it may point to a couple of things. There may be a need for education around whatever that innovative thing that we're doing, but it also may be of great interest to our investors if we're doing something differently. Even if it's only different to our community, it's different to our region, it's different to our country. Often we'll take something that's worked somewhere else in the world and adapt it into our community. And if we're doing something that's truly innovative, we may have a different type of investor who's interested in that, and we may have a different type of education on our hands with regards to people understanding the value of the product or service that you're offering. So educating our customer may be part of that sales chain in trying to have them buy our product or service. Value proposition. So what makes us different from the competition? If I can't figure out why someone should buy from me, then it's very difficult for them to figure that out. We also know something called, we use with clients something called the 80-20 rule, and we'll go into that a little bit later. I've been talking about being really clear about who that smaller segment is that is very interested in your product so that they come back over and over and over again, and they're able to help you make your business sustainable as opposed to trying to be everything to everyone. So when we look at value proposition, we look at customers and consumers value proposition. Again, I mentioned before that there may be a customer and a consumer who's different. So for example, we work a lot with government. So government actually provides funding for us to do training with other businesses. So the customer is government. The consumer is other businesses. So we have to make sure that as we're doing our marketing, that we need to know our product is valuable to the consumer, the person who's taking our training and is going to use that in their enterprise. But we need to sell different things to the government to explain to them why they should hire us to help those clients. So you may have a situation where you're doing your customer and consumer are different, or it may be the same. We also want to understand the value we bring to our community and the value we bring to our employees as well. So, and we need to finesse and get that language right, because the language around the value will become the language that's in our marketing. So here's a resource that we use regularly. It's called the Baines and Company Values Pyramid. It's out of the US. For people who are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where we talk about, we learn, at least we do learn here in high school about really basic needs that are at the bottom of this value pyramid, and to the top level where really we're talking about creating change in our lives and creating a change that impacts others. So that more historical pyramid has been changed by this company to look at 4 levels, which was in the original model as well, 4 levels of value that a product or service can bring to its customers. So if you go on to Google Image and for Baines and Company Value Pyramid, you'll see this one. This one looks at what's the functional value of our product or service? And it says things like it saves time, It simplifies a job. It reduces the effort for a job. It provides, helps us connect. So those are the very functional levels of what our product does. But our product may also have other types of value beyond just what the functional value of that product is. So what are the emotional values? How we know that people buy based on emotional decisions. So we need to engage the emotion of our potential customers in order to be able to help them make the decision to purchase our product. So what is the emotional value of that functionality that our product brings? So is it reducing someone's anxiety or providing them an opportunity for fun? It may be reducing their work time, which actually increases their ability to spend more time with their family, for example. So what's the functional value? Is there an emotional value? Going up that pyramid, then life-changing is something that's beyond emotional and is really looking at a lasting impact. So emotional may be sort of a more of a temporary situation. Life-changing is looking at, is this actually changing, the person's ability to have hope or to actually realize their dreams? And at the very top of that is social impact, which is self-transcendence. So your individual product or service may have a functional value, but it also may have an emotional or life-changing or social impact value. And it's important for you to understand that because people buy benefits, they don't buy products. They want the product to work, it needs to work functionally, but really people are going to be more drawn to your product or service if you can identify the way in which it will benefit the person who's making the purchase, just beyond the basic functionality. So there's lots of images out there. You can follow them back to Baines & Company, their website, and talk about values pyramid. The one I chose here describes the values. They've also got various examples in a pyramid where they have examples of companies that most of us would know to sort of understand how does Harley-Davidson motorcycle? What's the functionality of it? What's the emotional value of it? Is there a life-changing value? And is there a social impact or self-transcendence value? So there's lots of information out there to try to help figure out where your product or service falls. It's important to know more than just the functionality, but also that emotional connection that you're making to customers. Now that we've started to look at the value and articulate that value, that translates over into our market and marketing. So the customer relationship block is looking at how will you engage customer groups, and this is where you would identify one customer group from another, and we'll talk on the next slide a little bit about how to do that and refer back to that 80-20 rule that I spoke about earlier. So in this section, you might have a business-to-business consumer group. You might have an end user. You might have identified, for example, medical professionals. So we'll start to see in this section some separated target groups, and then how we're going to build our relationship with them. Is this going to be someone we do direct sales with? We're going to shake their hands and look them in the eye. Is this someone that we're going to make sales through online, through a website, and we're never going to meet the person? Is this someone that, is it a government that we're actually going to probably be responding to tenders? So that we have to look at the timing of when those comes out, and do we meet the criteria? And it doesn't matter how many times we show up at that government office, they have a process by which they pick the people who are successful with the tenders. So who my customers are and how I build a relationship with them will be different based on different customer groups. Then we look at the consumer benefit. So this is starting to translate that value over into language that the consumer, the person who's using the product or service, will understand. How do they benefit from buying your product or service that has a basic functionality? So how do we enhance that value to bring that more to an emotional level? And again, if I am selling to government, I'm going to have, and the end user is government, then that's one consumer benefit. If I'm selling to government, the end user is a third party, that would probably be a very different consumer benefit. If you're selling directly to the end user, then that language around that benefit would be different as well. So we would see as many consumer benefits as we have customer groups in this section above. And then channels. So the channels to reach government to offer a bid for a contract is very different than selling clothing to women in my community who are buying them for their children. And I'm doing that at the market on Saturday. So, there are different means that I'm going to use to reach my customers, whether that's the market on Saturday, whether that's online advertising, whether that's being part of a trade show, whether that's actually having a physical space where I sell my product or service that's all mine or something that I share. Um, and you might even be distributing it online, selling, mailing it or couriering it to someone somewhere else. With a trade, obviously, you're going to be more directly involved with your customer, but it may be quite a process to, it may be a handshake, and that's how the deal is made, but it also could be a process by which you're part of a bidding process in order to get your trade accepted by your market. So as many target market customers as I have in that top group, I'll have consumer benefits that directly relate to that, and then channels that directly relate to that. So those are somewhat unique as we start working in that section, but it's important to be able to really understand the consumer behavior of the person who's buying your product or service. It's always better to understand it historically than it is to ask someone, if I started this business, would you buy from me? People are generally going to be nice and say yes. But you want to actually know, are you already buying this? Where are you buying it from? How much are you spending every year? So it's better to look at past consumer behavior than it is to approach someone and just say, would you buy from me? Although there's certainly something called letters of intent, which is if I'm putting my business together, I get someone to write a letter that says, I make a commitment to purchase from this individual once they're up and running. So that's something that could be considered as well. But asking people in advance if they'll buy from you, if you invest, you get an investment in your business, generally speaking, people are going to be nice and say yes, but not necessarily follow through with the actual purchase once you're started. So here's that 20-80 rule, or the 80-20 rule. It was actually created by a mathematician by the name of Paderto, and he found it in years, probably almost 100 years ago now. And it applies in a whole bunch of different things in nature. And I used to teach at a university, and I taught a biology student, and he was studying turtles. And I taught him about the 80-20 rule, and he went back and came back a couple weeks later and said the 80-20 rules the 80-20 rule works with the birth of turtles in the wild. So this is a common phenomenon in the business world. What the 80-20 rule means is that 80% of your sales will come from 20% of the customers. So the reason the term target market was because we look at it like a target, as you see on this image. So there are 4 rings in this target. So I think of 4 different types of way in which I would describe the customer who is most likely to buy my product or service. Yes, lots of people could, but it's much more important for me to identify the group that is most likely to buy my product or service, and then market directly to them and give them exactly what they want, because they'll come back over and over and over again if they're happy. If I try to be too many things to too many people, the reverse of the 80-20 rule also applies. That 20% of that 80% of your customers will give you 20% of your sales. So if I'm trying to focus too broadly and be everything to everyone, I'm going to get a lot less people returning for that second sale, because they want something more specific than what I'm offering. So when I think about those 4 rings, I think of the outside ring being a geographic description. Geographically, where are you going to operate your business? There's only so far you can travel in a day or be away for a week. So geographically, where do you want to operate your business? Demographics is the next ring, and demographics describes things like income, age, gender, education. It could describe things about whether they own or rent, whether how many people are in the family, or how big their business is. So demographics is that type of description. So if I can describe geographically and then demographically the person that I think is most likely to buy my product or service. The next ring is psychographic. So psychographic is what people believe and value. how they how they decide what's important to them, and they make buying decisions based on that. So if someone believes in the environment, or they believe in science, or they believe in um, hiring locally, or they believe, what are the types of things that the customer that you want to attract believes and values, and therefore might be willing to pay for. And then that final ring in the center is, what is their past consumer behavior? Things like how often they buy a product or service. If you're selling a trade and to a homeowner, and that homeowner statistically only buys that product or service once a year, and you're trying to sell it 2 and 3 and 4 times a year, chances are that's going to be a very different sale, very hard sell. How much does that person normally pay? Also, what type of payment method? Especially working with other businesses, and with government, you need to know that it's going to take some time for that. The payment might be more sure than the end consumer, but it might take a long time for that payment to come. And governments might want purchase orders, or so the actual way in which should you be able to have credit card payment. Um, those types of things can make a difference between someone buying that product or service from you and someone going to another competitor who might have that feature that you don't have. So it's really important also to look at your competitors and identify what's important from an industry standard point of view. What are the things that you need to have in place so you can compete with the next company, but then you also need to be doing something that's different and valued from them. So if I describe my potential customer base in these 4 rings: geographically, where are they? Demographically, how do I describe them? Age, gender, psychographically, what do they value and what do they believe in? And then consumer behavior, how do they spend their money? How do they want to pay? How often do they buy? Then I can describe what's either called a customer profile or a customer persona. And I would have one of those for each of my target markets. It's important to understand them separately, because I am likely going to market to them separately. So the message, what's important to a business, might be completely different than what's important to an end consumer. What's important to government might be different than what's important to the business. So it's really important that I really have a fine-tuned understanding of the group that's most likely to buy my product or service. The other thing with business startup that we often recommend is that you get a product or service to market as quickly as possible, and then get feedback from that customer who's buying from you, and use that feedback to improve your product or service. So don't keep trying to sell something that people are not that happy with, or that isn't quite the right product. People are sort of reluctantly buying it. Say, how could I improve it? What would make it better? If someone says no to you, say, well, why are you saying no? I'd like to be better able to understand why it's a no today. And they might say, well, I only buy once a year and I buy it in January. Okay, well, I'll come back to you next December to sell my product or service to you, and I write that down and I track that. So a no is a good opportunity for market research about how to turn the no into a yes. So it's okay to get no's, find out the reason why, and move on to the next most likely person who's going to buy your product or service. And you'll find that you'll be able to fine tune your customer profiles fairly quickly in using that technique. Hopefully I don't lose my voice here in the last few minutes. I have a bit of a cold, so I'm just going to actually take a quick drink of water here. Okay. So now I've made a whole bunch of decisions on the top part of this canvas about how I'm going to operate my business, what are the resources I'm going to need, what are the activities, who am I going to partner with, what's the value I'm bringing to each individual customer group, how am I building relationships with them, what types of benefits am I marketing, and what channels am I using to reach them and to deliver to them. Now those things translate into dollars and cents. So from a cost of delivery point of view, what are the main costs? And we'll start to look here as well at how to price products, looking at comparison pricing to other companies, but also looking at different types of pricing, psychological pricing, all the different sort of elements of how to price my product or service. Cheaper than your competition is not always better, especially if you can provide a product that is very marketed at a particular group and therefore doesn't appeal to the larger market. Sometimes it's better to have a smaller market and give them exactly what they want, because it keeps that group coming back over and over and over again. So what are my costs? What are my equipment? What's my infrastructure, land, building? What are my materials that I have to buy more of as I sell more of my product or service? Who are my core staff versus additional staff? It may be that you create partnerships with other trades professionals in your community working together on a job. And that could be a great opportunity for building customers, is perhaps your other tradespeople in your community are actually customers to you, so that you can work on jobs together, so that if another company gets an opportunity to do some trades work, they pull you in as their valued partner in doing that type of work. And remember, under cost of delivery to include, the real costs associated with marketing your product or service, the time that's spent, the cost of bookkeeping, the cost of maintaining your website, all those types of things that we need to do, someone needs to do every day, whether it's us or whether it's other people that we hire. And we often sometimes forget to look at the cost of our own labor. But it's important as you're moving, especially as you're moving from something that might be more of a, I've been doing it part-time or on the side, into something that you want to do as a full-time gig. Community reinvestment. This is just really good from a marketing point of view. It also may be an opportunity for you to get some media coverage as you're opening your business or as you do good in the community. So how are you reinvesting in that community? You're hiring local, you're getting supplies locally, you're making donations to certain community programs. That's all newsworthy, and that gets your brand even more marketing that you don't have to pay for, which is great. And on the revenue streams, I would never recommend a single revenue stream to any enterprise. It's too likely to topple if that one market opportunity goes away. So really looking at how do I diversify my revenue streams? Maybe I even show my revenue streams to my different customer groups on different lines. How do I earn my income? Looking when you're doing startup or even on an ongoing basis, are there grants out there that I am eligible for? Are there ways to hire people, that there may be government programs that can assist me? Here in Nova Scotia, for example, we have a program that allows us to hire people who've recently graduated from post-secondary and pay 50% of their salary for the first year of their work. That's a truly wonderful opportunity for small businesses who are looking to increase their trades, especially if you're looking to get an apprentice. There may be apprenticeship programs that are out there that could support you adding on another apprentice during your busy time of year. Are there in-kind donations that may be made? Maybe you're actually sharing a space with with another business person, or even with a nonprofit in your community. So that saves you on rent. Could you crowdfund? I always recommend, there's a company called Start Some Good out of New Zealand, and they run a month-long program to help a company get ready to launch a crowdfund. I have several clients who've done it, really enjoy it, and find it valuable. And the company also gives you the first donation towards your campaign on their platform. So it's really important. Also, it could be that you're borrowing equipment or materials from another business perhaps. I certainly have clients, for example, who have used another person's business in their down hours, and they use it so it's a potential revenue for that other business person when they're normally closed. Sorry. They're normally closed, or their resources are underutilized, and therefore the new business doesn't have to go out and build a new infrastructure, and they can go and use someone else's facility during their downtime, and it actually keeps their costs down and provides another source of income to that business that has that facility that might be idle half a day a week, or at nights, or in the mornings, because their workforce doesn't come out until a different time of day. So I want to see revenue streams that we call both earned income, people buying your product or service, but also want to see social income, social revenue from those sources like grants or donations or in-kind or crowdfunding. So there we have it. Here's an entire example of a canvas completed. We'll just take a few more minutes to go through this, and then I've got one or two more slides there just to close off the session and open for questions. So here's
Lisa, if I just may interrupt just for a bit.
Sure.
As Lisa is going to close the session, you can start preparing for your questions, and we will then follow for the questions and answers section. Thank you, Lisa.
Sure.
You can go ahead.
Great, thank you. So this is Tom's Shoes. You may be familiar with Tom's Shoes, or you may not. Tom's Shoes started out with a premise of buying, of creating shoes. They're canvas shoes, sort of very basic shoes. We couldn't wear them in the wintertime in Nova Scotia, but in the summertime they're fine. So they're a very basic canvas shoe made with simple materials. And with the purchase of one pair of shoes in the Western world, the original concept was that one pair of shoes could be bought for individuals in the developing countries. And the premise sounded good in the Western world, but originally Tom's had not done their research well. They launched their company, they actually got lots of funding. And what happened was they had been presumptuous about the help that providing shoes to the needy would provide in the developing countries. So I'm not exactly sure how they chose their markets, but they chose several countries they were working with. And as people in the Western world bought a pair of shoes, they literally shipped a pair of shoes over to these countries and basically flooded the marketplace with free shoes. What tended to happen was these shoes were seen as valuable, so people would actually sell the shoes for money because they needed money for other things, for food, for example, more than they needed the shoes. And the other thing that happened was there were local shoe industries in these communities, and as this glut of free shoes came in, the local shoe industry faltered, and it actually put more people out of work than the benefit it created. So Tom's Shoes discovered this folly, this error they had made in understanding the problem they were trying to address. Tom's Shoes has pivoted. So we call when a company needs to sort of change direction, we call that a pivot. So like you would pivot in basketball, you keep one foot on the floor and you change direction by spinning around and moving your other foot in a different direction. And that's what Tom's Shoes has done. So they realized their error in the initial business model. Although they were very successful financially and donated a lot of shoes, they actually created more damage than good in the developing countries, in the communities where they were working. So they reinvented themselves. They now work directly with local economic development companies. And as someone in the Western world buys a pair of Tom's shoes, the value, the monetary value of that pair of shoes is then donated to a local organization that then uses that money in the best way for that community to help grow and provide benefit for that community. So they were able to survive this very negative, presumptuous approach they took to business. So here is their canvas. So who are their key allies? So suppliers were their allies, and their materials are environmentally sourced now. So that's another lesson they learned along the way. They sell shoes, so they have shoe retailers who sell the product directly to customers in the Western world. They now have partners with humanitarian organizations who actually take the funds and make sure they're being used wisely locally. And they have in-country volunteers who still do distribute shoes locally where appropriate. Their key resources, they needed money, working capital. They need a large workforce to mass produce these shoes. They need manufacturing facilities, and they needed a volunteer base that they were working with in those communities on the ground across the world. What are the key activities? They need to develop the product, and they now have a different series of shoes that come out. Each year there's different products. They need to manufacture. They need to do online selling. So they do a lot of selling in stores, but you can also sell online, which is sort of a global trend. They needed to be able to track and ship their orders. So some individual pairs of shoes that were ordered online, but also volumes of shoes that were being distributed to local shoe retailers. They need customer service support. So they need what happens if there's problems, what's the 1-800 phone number people are going to call, and now online on the website. And they need to identify social programs that their money could support in these developing countries. What's their social value? They were one of the first ones to do a one-for-one concept where instead of making a donation to create social change, you bought a product, and for every one of the shoes, there was initially another pair of shoes, and now the value of another pair of shoes. What's the value proposition? Remember, we're selling shoes here. So what are they selling? They're selling the opportunity to support a meaningful cause. They're selling a high quality product for sure. They're now selling an ethical company. For a while, you could question whether they actually were ethical or not, or whether they were actually taking advantage of the communities where they were doing that work. Tom shoes are now considered a bit of a status symbol. Not a status symbol as in you're rich, but a status symbol as if you care about people in other places in the world. And it was just a new way to make a donation to something that you believed in. So people bought these shoes because of the social impact they felt these shoes would have, and still do. So customer relationships. So they have built a brand nationally, specifically with millennials and hipsters. So those are two demographic groups, different ages, different incomes, that type of thing. So these are the people who are buying the shoes. And people experiencing first world consumer guilt. So an interesting concept. So people who want to know that they're using their dollars to buy products that are making a positive impact somewhere else in the world, probably because they're feeling guilty about their privilege of birth. By the means of where they were born, they end up with all this, sort of value that being born in another place, they wouldn't necessarily have. What are the consumer benefits of buying the pair of shoes? Interesting. Children are educated, there's better health, and there's economic opportunities. So there's nothing in there saying about the shoes they're comfortable, or they last a certain amount of time, or they're fashionable. The consumer benefit here is directly tied to the value that they're bringing in this being a donation. What are the channels they're using to either reach the customers or get their product to market? So social media, global awareness, so they're involved in global awareness raising events, very high profile stuff. They do promotions on campuses and in school programs, so this is being taught, so that generates the idea of more people knowing about it and more people basically wanting to buy the shoes. They also tied it to corporate giving and created corporate partnerships, which again enhanced that. Instead of buying a pair of shoes, now we're talking thousands of dollars invested through corporate support. Their e-commerce and online advertising and sales function, and they have an international network of shoe retailers that actually distribute the product in North America. So what are the costs? Their costs are designing and manufacturing the shoes, marketing the shoes, which is a really big piece for this company. If we look at what the customer value is and then what the customer benefits and value proposition, it's all about the story behind the shoes that sell the shoes. Then the logistics, like how do you get shoes and money and resources across the world, and the distribution of those donated shoes. Some of those are still done, just in an ethical way. What's their community reinvestment? That one-on-one, either product donation or now money donation, and the connection to company giving programs. So large companies investing large amounts of money, which creates even more benefit elsewhere in the world. What are the revenue streams? The revenue streams are directly from shoe sales, and now they have a line of accessories. So each year they come out with new shoes, but they're also coming out with other types of products now. We realize here, though, the revenue stream doesn't say donations, because that's a flow through. Those donations never stay part of Tom's shoes. They always flow through directly to these companies where they're doing this good community economic development work in education and family health in other countries. So that donation component of this enterprise is not seen as a revenue stream because it's actually the social value that this organization provides. There's one more slide I wanted to show you, and then we'll open to questions. So Common Good Solutions also owns a second company called the Social Enterprise Institute. And the Social Enterprise Institute is the world school for social enterprise. So if you are able to connect through the internet to learning, we have some courses on there that are free of charge, and there's also some that we charge for. We also have a channel on YouTube. So if you look for Social Shifters on YouTube, there's a series of videos as well with companies that we've worked with. And of course, our website is Common Good Solutions. Um, and you can contact us as well through the Social Enterprise Institute if you have any questions. Um, I'm just going to leave it there at this point, and maybe we can ask for questions now, Letitia.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This was very informative, and I believe it's going to help many be able to take this business model canvas and also then implement it to their business plan. Um, Everyone, if you have any questions, this is your opportunity now to clarify, to express any concern, or if you just want to have any sort of questions, please use the opportunity now. We do have one question from Grace Mahinda. She's asking, is it possible for a profit enterprise to change to a social enterprise?
Sure. Yeah, it actually is. There's no requirement to change your legal structure at all. As I mentioned, we are a for-profit enterprise. It's more on how you operate the enterprise and how you make decisions about creating a social impact. So even if you're not making, donating profit back at the end, and therefore you don't meet Nova Scotia's definition. By the way, there's no one definition of social enterprise, even in Canada or anywhere in the world. So it's a bit of a moving target. But it's really looking at where in the way you operate your enterprise can you have a positive impact in your community. So that could be simply looking at who am I hiring. A lot of organizations that we work with hire disadvantaged members of the community. So people who have barriers to employment, who might not normally get a job. They might say, well, I want to focus on those individuals and give them the opportunity to find work with us. It could be that I'm presently buying some of my supplies from somewhere else in the world or somewhere else in my country, and I actually want to look for local replacement supplies, and I'm buying more from the local area and making sure that money keeps getting reinvested in the local marketplace. So that could be a way. It could be that you do identify some particular social cause that's important to you and your community, and you invest in that by making donations to them. It could also be some companies take staff time and donate to volunteer for a certain organization. So a couple of times a year, we as a collective group of people donate our time. We donate our time to another volunteer cause in the community. We go out and spend a day that we should be working, or actually volunteering in the community. There's real value in that as well. Sometimes we're doing things like repairing a community center, but other times we're actually donating the skills that we have around marketing and building an enterprise and that type of thing. So we're actually using the skills that we use every day, and we're going out and donating that to the community, to organizations that couldn't afford to work with us.
Excellent.
So there's lots of different ways to do it.
Perfect. And then there are quite a number of feedback saying thank you very much. This is refreshing. Also that this is very informative. Thank you, Caroline. And thank you, Megan. We also have a question here, which is along the same lines as moving from a profit to a social enterprise. Because one would like to now convert to social enterprise. If that's possible, yes, it is possible. But how do you go about it? What is it that you need to take into consideration? I'm assuming that you, in order to move from, let's say, profit driven to a social enterprise, and what are the elements that need to change? Is there a specific a difference between it? I think they just want to elaborate more on the how to move about.
Sure. So you would look at, first of all, you'd look for organizations that help business startups in your community. Um, from a legal structure point of view, in Canada, you can be any legal structure. I noticed someone mentioned cooperative as well. We would consider cooperatives already social enterprises, because the value of a cooperative is that provides a product or service that a community needs that's not available, and it also makes being part of a business viable for people who have smaller amounts of money in order to create a business entity. So the members of a cooperative are the people who are getting the value from that cooperative. And so a cooperative would be considered a social enterprise here in Canada for sure. So
And
looking at, from an operations point of view, it's looking at your supply chain, it's looking at how you operate your enterprise, it's looking at where the true value, so that community reinvestment part on the bottom of the financial section of the canvas, that's really where we can prove you're a social enterprise or you're not. So there are clear things that I can prove in the way that you make decisions for your enterprise that mean you have put community first or a particular social group in your community first. And sometimes make decisions as a social enterprise that actually reduce profit. So we might make a donation so we don't have as much money in our pocket anymore. Or if I've decided to hire a marginalized from a marginalized group, that those people coming into that employment may need extra supervision, at least in the short term, until they have learned how to do their jobs. Um, so that cost, that increased supervisory costs, is actually from a straight business, for-profit business, you would say that's a bad investment. But from a social enterprise point of view, you would say that's a great investment because by providing people a little bit of extra support until they understand their roles and know how to do their job, we are taking people who would previously not be employed, providing opportunities for them. So now they have ability to create an income in their community and for their family over their lifetime has increased. So that puts more money in the economy locally and creates that, spin. So those are all things that you would look at. Legal structure um, can be a part of it, but it's not the only component of it. And there's actually four things that you would look at if you're trying to decide whether you want to become a social enterprise. So you would look at um, control. So, for example, if you're a cooperative or you're not a nonprofit legal structure, there's a board that makes decisions, whereas a sole proprietor, um, there's a single entity. If you incorporate as a company, if you have shareholders, there's also a board that makes decisions. So control could be one thing. If you have intellectual property, you may want to just privately own because if you open up a social enterprise, it's usually decisions made by collective individuals. So that maybe you may not want to risk that. It also has to do with looking at the market. So what does the market expect? And is there value in, do people understand what a social enterprise is? And is there market value in that? Sometimes if people don't know what it is, they'll be suspicious about it. And they'll be concerned that you're somehow taking advantage of the community or those marginalized individuals. So there's a number of factors that you would want to look at before just completely changing your operations, because your decision to do that may actually make your customer groups question what you're doing because maybe they don't understand what social enterprise is. Some people think it's about using social media to market their companies. So it's not always the best decision just to jump 100% in, and it may be that it's a transition over time. So this year you start making donations to local, you know, women's health programs. Next year you start looking for opportunities for people who are in high school to actually volunteer and learn about your career. Maybe that's a way of investing in young women, for example. And then you look for an opportunity for those people to come and start doing part-time work with you. And it might be a transition over time as opposed to I'm going to stop being a for-profit today and I'm going to be a social enterprise tomorrow. I hope that makes sense.
Perfect. And that question was came from Trisha. Thank you so much. The next question, actually just a comment from Lena. Greeting from Ukraine. Thank you very much. I want to follow up about cooperation with Ukrainian women business owners. Excellent.
Great.
All right. So we have here, thanks for improving my knowledge. Very clear.
There's a question about ranking of sectors.
Yes, I see that
So
right now.
yeah,
Exactly.
there's certainly people can be involved in doing almost anything. If we look at daycares and healthcare, and those are fairly common from a social enterprise point of view. So health related types of things are quite common. But we have individuals like I work with one company that's very involved with local food production and waste. We are from an area where there's lots of food grown, but there's also lots of food wasted. So for example, I'm not sure how food is picked in your various countries, but often machinery would pick a field, but the edges of the field would not get touched by the machinery, or they might have several rows of food that, because they had a wide turn when the tractor was turning around to come down the next row, they missed a whole bunch of food. So in our area, 40% of food in the field goes to waste. So this particular client is actually, she's got a workforce that goes out and after the machine has gone through the field, garners that 40% that's usually left in the field and rots and then is plowed back under, and is now taking that food that is actually been donated by the farmer because it's of no value to him, and they're now taking that food and doing up food boxes and selling it at a cheaper rate back to local consumers. So they're trying to make sure that all the food that's actually grown locally makes it to individuals locally and doesn't get shipped and transported around the countryside. So there's an example of just looking at waste that's created by an industry and saying, how could we turn that into something that is of value, but also of value, in this case, it's of more value to people of low income. So the very people who don't tend to have the money to buy the healthiest food are now the ones who are benefiting from this health box program that she's developed from food that previously would have been thrown away.
Perfect. So we are running out of time. I'm going to take two more questions. I would just like for everyone to know that we will be sending the webinar link. We will be sending the presentation as well with additional information from Lisa. Two more questions, and this comes from Juliet. Um, if your company offers small businesses in its community free coaching and resources to help them grow, does it count as social enterprise as well?
Um,
The social enterprise.
it, it would almost, you'd have to sort of figure out how much of the work you do was attributed to that. The thing to think about, if it's a some people pay and some people don't pay type of model, the people who don't pay has to be based on the people who have already paid. So if you open your doors and say, I have freed something, whatever it is, to this particular part of my community, then all the people wanting that free service are going to come in and keep you busy. And you're not going to be able to have the time and resources to actually offer that same service to someone else who has paid. And the reality is, unless you have that paid market, you can't afford to give away the free, in this case, coaching. So we need to find the market that wants to pay for the coaching, and specifically what type of coaching and what details and when and how often, and find out all that consumer behavior. And it may be that you have to go out and do surveys and have focus groups and find that out. But you really don't, if you have a business that you're trying to make sustainable over the long term, it's unrealistic to think that you can just offer the free stuff. You have to have that revenue coming in that makes you stable, and then be able to take a portion of that and then redistribute that to others free of charge. But without that for pay side of the entity, you're just creating a model that's probably not financially sustainable over the long term. Even if you can get a bit of grant money to start with, it just becomes, because people are always going to, then the people who you're trying to charge are going to say, well, why am I not going to get free? Because I see the people coming in the other door are getting services from you for free. So you have to be really careful with that model. Um, it's almost a pro bono type of model, but you need to make sure that you've got your business is financially viable first, and then look at how. And you have to be very careful about determining who gets the free services and what type of sort of criteria they have to meet in order to do that. Otherwise, people will just make up stories as they fit and get the free service. Don't know if there is any other questions. I'm just going through here. I will, point out that there's probably more purpose-led businesses in the world than there are social enterprises. So a purpose-led business, maybe doesn't fit the definition of social enterprise in that 50% or more of the profit is going back to the community. But a purpose-led business is keeping profit, people, and planet in mind. So maybe the idea is not necessarily to be a social enterprise. Maybe that's too big a leap. Maybe the idea is to be a purpose-led business so that you're presenting yourself to the public, to your partners and suppliers as, I care about profit. Yes, that's important because that allows me to create a sustainable model. But I also want to do things that are going to be positive for the community, people in my community and my region, do things that are at least not going to do worse to the environment than is happening in the rest of the world. So making decisions about that and marketing those types of decisions may actually become competitive advantage to people buying from you instead of. So that social component or purpose-led or whatever language you want to use can actually become the thing that differentiates you from the other people offering the same or similar product that you. So it actually becomes your unique value proposition. Whether you call it a social enterprise or a purpose-led company or just a company that gives back and cares.
Excellent. All right, perfect. So we've had a number of feedback saying that this has really been helpful, Lisa. Thank you so much for your time and for your insight on the social business model canvas. I see someone saying, I'm going to work on my business canvas right now. Excellent.
That's wonderful.
Just a few housekeeping rules. As I stated, that I will send all of the relevant information, the recording, the presentation, and we will be sharing additional documents with everyone. I would like to please ask everyone who attended to fill out an evaluation form for the SheTrades Invest webinar, because we want to improve on these webinars. We want to get topics that interest you concerning your business, concerning finance and investments. So the evaluation form is really valuable for us, and it will help us help you. With that said, Lisa, thank you so much, and everyone else, thank you for participating and engaging with us. If you have any questions on SheTrades or SheTrades Invest, please email womenandtrade at intrasend.org. Lisa, thank
Great.
you. Any final words?
Just, it's the part of being part of a community and having the responsibility of running a business is to make decisions that we know will lift our community up as well as ourselves. And at the end of the day, I think that's, businesses that aren't doing that are eventually, people are going to walk away from those businesses and not buy their products and services in the long term. So this is really about looking at long-term sustainability, um, and how to differentiate ourselves and make sure that we're building a better world.
Excellent. Thank you all once again, and please enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, or afternoon. And Lisa, thank you, and I'll be in contact with you later on. Goodbye,
Great.
everyone.